Hello and welcome to my PTS number 2 for Energy Draw feedback video. In the first one I was very prescribed, I did it on script. I wanted to give the information of what Ghost Heat was, when it was introduced, what it aimed to do. It's like all of its history, and compare and contrast that with Energy Draw. And so if I just rambled through that one, it would have taken me half an hour. So I did a pre-recorded video and it got it down to 7.5 minutes. But today we're going to look at the Energy Draw number 2 system. Now we're going to go flip over here to that's my recording software. We're going to go into the patch notes for the update for August 23rd, and we're going to go through these, and we're going to go through and also take into consideration the ideas that I'd levy towards it at the end of my first video, which was previous heat scale builds are not penalized as much as they were before. So things like 3 PPCs, which was considered a problem in the past, is now not a problem, and it's not being penalized under the system. Pinpoint front-loaded damage is different than damage over time weapons like lasers and damage over area weapons like SRMs and LB, and should be penalized as such. They should have varying draw values based on the properties of the weapons and not just damage. And special attention needs to be made to the Gauss rifle because of its high damage, high speed, low heat, extremely low heat, the best damage per heat weapon in the entire game. So let's take a look at what they've done. So they, of course, this is just going to be the changes. So if you want to know what the original Energy Draw stuff, head over to that post right there. But we're going to look at the changes here. So heat penalty change. It has been changed to 1 point of heat for every energy over the limit. So this was 0.5 before. So basically, they've doubled the penalties. So if you were getting by and you were going, okay, I'm going to go 40 over the limit, which would give you a value of 10. Previously, you would get 5 heat, and now you're getting 10 heat. So it's double, it's linear again, but it starts getting much bigger, much faster when you start getting more points on there. Because if before it was going to be 5 penalty, now it's 10, but if before it was 7.5, now it's 15, so it's getting much faster. And if it's going to be 10 previously for penalty, it'd be 20 now. So that penalty is getting much higher, much quicker, which is an interesting change. They might have been a little heavy-handed here. Maybe a 0.75 would be a nice one to test as well. Sort of in the middle, see if that level of penalty per point of energy works as well. Damage received from override no longer applies to the head. That's just a good change all around. That doesn't even need a PTS. That can just go into the game, because there was always that small chance that when you overridden, you would just hit your head and you die instantly, and you'd be like, what? I was overridden for like half a second, and I just happened to randomly roll my head and I died. It should be that you have a few seconds of your mech exploding around you as you're overriding. You can decide whether or not you want to turn it off during that time or not. Now, they applied a 20% increase in energy consumption for basically front-loaded weapons. So autocannons, PPCs, and the like. So let's take a look here. And LBX weaponry, for some reason, were not set at their 0.75 energy previously, so now they are. So previously they were actually 1-to-1 and therefore weren't buffed by the system, but now that has been corrected, and so now is the best time to check your LB weaponry. But here we go. So energy consumption increased by 20%, 2 to 2.4, 5 to 6, 10 to 12, and so on down the list. All of these ones here. Now they have special notes for the AC20s and LB20s. for the AC-20, which is the single shot 20, the IS, they increased the draw, but they're also lowering the cooldown for the large ACs. And that was just to give them a little bit of improved DPS, so that when you're close to your target, when you're in that brawl range, and you've actually made it to brawl range, and you can make that build work then. So an AC-20 has just massively more DPS than a Gauss rifle would ever have, or an AC-10 maybe would have. I'm not sure of the AC-10 stats, but basically making it so the closer you're going to get with a nice big large caliber weapon is going to mean you're going to have really good DPS when you're there, and I do enjoy that. I think it's a good change, so that way that brawler mech that does either have the smarts and the ability to maneuver and get close to you or has the balls to go out in the open and push on your position, when he reaches you in either way, he's going to have the advantage. And I like that, because it's rewarding that playstyle and rewarding the person that is either using his smarts to flank you or is just soaking up damage for his team in order to get into position. Now, look at lasers here. They did a slight adjustment to clan lasers. They unnerfed, basically, the clan ER medium and ER large. So instead of going to these weapons that were like, oh, the duration is so long and the energy draw is so high, there's no reason to take them because I can get the same effectiveness out of a PPC with the same energy draw, but it's instantaneous. So what they've done is, instead of lowering these, which I'm happy that they haven't lowered any weapons in terms of their energy draw, except for a couple, which I do agree with, they basically unnerfed the weapons a bit, so they're a bit more potent, even though they're going to draw full power. So the max range has gone up a little bit, like another 90 meters-ish, 80 meters-ish, and we have gotten a drop of 0.1 seconds to the duration. And for the clan ER large, a huge drop of duration, a 0.15 second duration. At 1.5 seconds, clan ER large lasers were like playing with lightsabers. They were so annoying. At 0.35, they are going to be quite nice to use. And again, just another max range increase here. Very small, just about 33 meters. I think that's good. Getting a little bit more bite back to those weapons. I think that's a really great reason why energy draw should go forward, is you can have a weapon that is amazing by itself, but you can specifically design it to not be used with other weapons. So in the sense with like what they've done to the Gauss, and what they maybe could even do even further, is that you can have a weapon that by itself, its stats are amazing, but you can have it so that it's basically designed to use by itself. You should build a mech around the weapon instead of adding that weapon to an already existing design in order to buff its damage, because you can just make the thing absolutely amazing in terms of stats, but then have it a really high draw so that people have to fire it by itself. Moving on to SRMs, they had a lot of feedback that people wanted to fire 4 SRM6s at once, and I'd agree with that, because there are a lot of medium mechs that have come onto we're going to fire 4 SRM6s with Artemis and then as our main weapon, and we shouldn't really get penalty from that, because hey, we're a medium and all we have is 4 SRM6s. So think of a Griffin 2N, for example, or a Stormcrow with not firing one of its SRM6s. So I think I totally agree with this, that you should be able to fire 4 without any penalty, and that beyond that you start to get penalty. But to counterbalance that a little bit, because you are basically increasing the alpha ability of those mechs at short range, what they've done is they've decreased the spread of those weapons very slightly, so by 20%. And they have a little graphic here of what that looks like, an increase of 20%. So it's not terrible. I'd love to know what distance this would be at. So, like, is that covering the entire body of a Atlas? I don't know. Or is that entire body of a Locust? Like, some context here would be nice if they had a mech silhouette there, and they put the 2 circles over the mech silhouette so we can get an idea. Okay, are we going to be spreading over the arms now, or is it going to be still all on the torsos, or something along those lines? Say, like, at 100 meters it should look like this, and then we can get an idea, because that's where most SRM combat takes place. But energy consumption decreased to 7.5 from 9, which means that with our 30 in total, it easily fits 4 SRM6s, so that's fine. Missile spread increased on the 4s, though, without any decrease in energy total, is slightly annoying. There should just be a linear thing for every missile. It should be so much quantity of energy draw. So we should be able to appropriately do it so the 4s, you can have that number of missiles, the 6 times 4 missile, but instead be 4 times 6. So SRM4s take 6 of them, and it should be the same penalty as 4 SRM6s, because it's the same amount of missiles, right? You can make some arguments either way, if that the SRM4s are getting higher DPS and all that kind of stuff because they recycle a little bit quicker, but it should be relatively close. You should at least be able to take 5 SRM4s with no penalty. So that's just a little bit of inconsistency there that could be cleaned up. For PPCs, they are doing the direct damage thing, so they've increased them by 20% as well. So up to 12 energy from the 10 for both the IS PPCs, but they've also reduced the cooldowns. Increased the cooldowns, reduced the amount of times you can fire them in a certain duration by increasing the cooldowns for about 0.7-ish of a second. So 5.25 seconds, it is noticeably longer. Increase of heat varies slightly by 0.5 here, back to its original heat generation of 10, and for the ERPPC up to its original heat generation of 15. And for the clan ERPPC, going from that 13.5, the reason they put it down there a little bit lower than its total 15 damage is because it has the splash damage, which means that 5 of that damage is going to side parts that you're not aiming for. It may be useful, but many of times it's not useful, is you're trying to pop out a torso section and an arm takes 2.5 damage and you don't care because that arm wasn't important. It's at relatively full armor. You're trying to take down this XL Warhammer or something, and you're trying to blast through its side torso, and that damage is effectively wasted. So that is why it is at 15 and not 15 plus 20%, which is what these ones are. Their damage plus 20%. This one's just its damage because of that spread is a little bit of a drawback for the weapon. I like the cooldowns here. I think they make the weapons a bit more sluggy. I had the feeling of, when I was doing my testing, that the battles are less like sort of quick guys going in there, they're in a fist fight, and they're just trying to look for a knockout really quick, and more of like, I feel like we're a pair of super heavyweight boxers that are just going to go and just pummel each other for many, many rounds of boxing, and instead of, that quick, oh, it's over in one fight, MMA kind of thing, where here it's a nice slow slugfest. And it feels more like big, devastating weapons when you do them that way. And now to Gauss rifles, which was one of my points here, was the special attention needs to be prepared for them, is that their energy consumption went up by 33% and not 20%. So more energy consumption, and there's a couple other changes though. Their health went up from 5 to 10. And also, that was only for the inner sphere Gauss rifle. The component health went up. With the clan Gauss rifle, component health stayed the same, but it's getting a slight nerf due to the fact that explosion chance has increased to 100% from 90. So while before it was basically guaranteed, because it was a 90% chance that you would take some damage when your Gauss rifle explodes, now it's guaranteed. So if you can get in there and you can see that that mech has a Gauss rifle and it's open torso and you've got machine guns because you're like some little spider or something like that, oh man, you're just cackling to yourself because you know that one errant machine gun round is going to add a whole crap ton of damage to that side torso, and that's great. Now, I do have some footage of the gameplay. I've probably been playing it a little bit in between where I've been talking here, maybe emphasizing a specific note I've been talking about. I played a SRM Summoner, I played a Kodiak with 2 ERPPCs and 2 Gauss rifles, I played a Gauss Jaeger mech, and I played a 4 Ultra 5 Mauler. And I'm just going to sort of, some of my more meta builds, and I'm going to talk about them. Start with the obvious one, which is the Gauss one, because this is the one we're talking about right now. The dual Gauss Jaeger mech is still heat neutral, so you don't have to worry about that. Even though the fact that, if we say pop over the spreadsheet warrior, if I'm not showing you footage in the background, just for me to look at it, the dual Gauss build creates 12 total heat when you fire, but over the time it takes to recharge those Gauss rifles, because it's so long now, you cool down 28 points of heat. So, oh, that's with 20 DHS. What's with 10? It's still heat neutral, but with 10 DHS, the base, just your engine, you cool down 16 points per 6 point something seconds for the Gauss rifles. So no worries about your dissipation. Your Gauss rifles are always going to be heat neutral. Where you start getting some heat buildup with them is when you start throwing in a PPC or two sort of feeling. You throw in a single PPC and you start building up heat, and your third alpha will shut you down as per my calculations. So a dual Gauss isn't dead, it's just slower. It feels much more like a sniper rifle in that sense, of like a big humph weapon, because you're doing a whole bunch of damage and you have to wait like 7 seconds for you to reload and get back out there. So I like it. Next up, we'll do the SRM Summoner. I played on that one. It got actually toasty very quickly. I had the 5 SRM 6s with Artemis, and I'll just put that into my spreadsheet warrior so I can see my numbers here. Yeah, there's a fair amount of penalty. I mean, it's not crazy. We're shooting off 60 damage with 37.5 draw for a total of 7.5 penalty with a weapon heat, which means a total of 27.5 heat per volley, and it builds up pretty quickly. Let's see, what am I think I had about, say, can't remember how many heat sinks I had on this thing. Let's take a peek here. Hopefully it's the same build on the PTS. It should be. We had 16, so we'll put that into the spreadsheet warrior, and we have a total of 5 alphas shutting down on the 5th without with that setup. So yeah, I did find myself getting a little bit toasty. That 7.5 extra heat is basically 2 more SRM 6s, so it's like I was firing 7 SRM 6s at once. So it started building up. I had to switch to chain fire for the second half of the fight because I needed the constant DPS instead of the alpha and run away, because I was versus both a direwolf and a commando, and the commando was always trying to sneak around me and put SRM4s in my back, so I was trying to take out the direwolf really quickly, but I was actually losing overall DPS by taking the alpha by alpha striking, because I was going for the burst DPS, and I needed just basically to kill the guy as fast as possible, so I needed the consistent DPS, and that's why I switched to chain fire. And yeah, it still worked well. I still did very good damage, but the power draw is limiting it slightly. But I mean, hey, I got an SRM volley of 60 damage, and I'm only getting 7.5 penalty heat. It's not that bad. Next up would be the 4 UAC 5 Mauler. Now, wow, UAC 5s have gotten a fair amount of pain here. Absolutely no problems with the energy draw system, none at all. It would never even came close to using up my energy, as I couldn't really fire that often because the AC5s have gotten such a hit to their cooldown. Maybe that cooldown could come back slightly. I'd have to put those numbers into my spreadsheet and see exactly what the DPS is, where the DPS graph goes, but I'm always up for consistency. So if your high DPS is your AC2s, it should go down slightly all the way to your 20s, or is it the other way around? Is your low DPS your 2s, it should go up slightly to your 20s, or are they all the same DPS? It should be flatlined. Basically, you shouldn't have these weird troughs and peaks where, say, AC2 is high, AC5 is low, AC10 is high, and AC20 is high. It's just like, why is AC5 being treated like such? We do have the 1.5 heat on it, which brings it perfectly in line pretty much with damage per heat for ballistic weapons, so that is great. But just take a look at that cooldown, make sure it's lining up properly, and maybe bring it down a little bit. It was 1.66 previously. It's at 2.3 on the PTS right now, if I'm correct, and therefore maybe it should come down to 2.1, maybe 2. Try it around there, see how it goes, and that'll be something else. And next up is the Kodiak 3, which I had 2 PPCs and 2 Gauss on, and it is way hotter than before. Firing the dual Gauss, dual PPC together, because the heat penalty is now 1 for 1 instead of 0.5 to 1. The Gauss rifles, when you tack them on to your 2 PPCs, and also the fact that the PPCs had their energy draw increased and their heat increased slightly, basically makes it so that dual PPC, dual Gauss with my mech with 20 double heat sinks and Elited was like 95% heat or something along those lines. Very, very high heat when alpha striking. Or like barely shutting it down if you weren't overriding. I'm okay with that. Like, it's a really big woomph of a gun that 2 PPCs and 2 Gauss is. Like, you can kill almost an entire front torso of a medium with that. Just bam, their armor is gone, and that's 2/3 of their health, typically, the armor of a mech. So I feel like it's fair for that level of firepower to be penalized in such a way. Some people may disagree with that, but I think it's good. And this is another thing that they've done to go against Gauss a little bit more, is because it's 1-to-1 now, when you tack on a Gauss rifle, instead of it being adding 8.5 damage for 8.5 heat for 15 damage like it was before with 0.5, now because it's 15 to 20 and it's 1-to-1 instead of 0.5 to 1, now you're adding 21 damage. No, I keep saying damage. 21 heat for 15 damage. So the damage per heat there is way lower than before. So it makes it so if you're a heavy or an assault mech and you want to tack on something onto your alpha to make it that little bit bigger, a Gauss rifle is actually going to be pretty devastatingly bad for you, because you don't want all 20 of that draw to be penalty, because that is a lot of penalty. And then what else did I play? I think that's it for my design. So yeah, I thoroughly enjoyed the PTS2. I think we're going in the right direction. I think some just finer tuning of these numbers will be good, and of course it's something that can be ongoing if this system is ever put into the game. Yeah, I'm looking forward to PTS3 with some just finerly tuned numbers, maybe with a penalty scale of, instead of 1, maybe 0.75 or 0.8. And yeah, thanks for listening. Hope you enjoyed the video, and good hunting.